Now we're going to talk about the UV room. In order to get to the UV room, you really need to move from the Retopo room to the UV room. And I don't mean just click on it. If you click on it right now, assuming that you have done no other operations to send it to the paint room, you'll have nothing there. So you need to really start working on this in the Retopo room, or let it do it for you. If you go with merge for NM with per pixel or one of these other options, I'll just click on the default settings. And what it'll do is very quickly take what you've retopoed, set up the UVs, and push it over to the paint room. So right now, if I were to uncheck or hide my Voxtree here, what you'll see is the object has now been exported. It actually has our retopology on it. It has the layers in the paint room for the occlusion and the normal map, as well as a layer or paint layer to put texture on. And so that's what that's done. But before it got there, it went from Retopo to the UV, set up the UVs automatically, unwrapped them, packed them, and then went to the paint room. So everything is done pretty quickly, and you saw how fast that works. It's just about as fast, even with very complex and detailed models. The only thing you may run into, and it depends on the version that you have, some bake well, some don't. So having said that, the whole point of this in this particular video wasn't necessarily to cover the paint room or the process of going to it necessarily, but just to show you the only way you're going to see these UVs is if you go either to do it automatically, as I just did, or if I remove that particular model in the paint room, there's nothing to texture. Your UVs disappear. So let's go ahead and mark some scenes. We'll do this manually this time. One of the things we're going to look for is planar areas of our mesh, because those are easy to cut out and create a flat plane that's going to capture lighting information very well. And that's what you need to think about. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a island right here. I have a little bit of red and pink, but it's not that bad. If I were to cut it down here, you'll see a lot more, and down here even more. And the reason that is if I was looking at it from the top down, I'm not going to see these lower ones as easily from the top. So one thing I could try is this up here. Now that's going to work really well. But then I have this island in the middle, and it just looks awful. So if I were to even cut right there, I'll still get a lot of red in the middle. And this is really a flavor thing. You know, to some degree, 3D Coat will show you how well it works when you bake it. But for the most part, with experience, I've learned, go with something maybe like this, or perhaps like this, and then cut that line down the middle. And this gives me more or less what I need. So at this point, when I'm ready, I'll go ahead and unwrap it, and it'll create my islands. I'll go ahead and auto scale or pack my UVs. And there's different packing operations. You'll notice that there's this pack set of clusters on the UV plane. You can even overlap your clusters if you need to. Pack current set of clusters on the UV plane, exactly overlaid islands will be shuffled. No unwrapping will be performed, only packing will be done. And then this one that basically packs them without rotating or flipping them. So if I wanted to do that, I could. It doesn't seem to be doing a whole lot of anything there, and that's okay. You can even have sharp seams where you actually do want to have a nice definitive angle when you're trying to work with hard surface modeling, and you want the textures to look pretty sharp there. So there's a way to do that. At this point, I'm going to update the islands. Now, you'll see that if I go to the UV room, we're still not getting anything out of it. So I have to send this over. And at that point, what I can do is go through the same process I did before, but instead of using the exact same default settings, I'm going to go over here to this last dialog box, and it says keep UV. Now before it should have said auto mapping. In this case, it's saying keep UV because it knows I've set up these UVs. Now, if you're not seeing this by default, it's probably because you haven't done the update islands. Once you do that, it should recognize that you have UVs there, and you could choose at this point to click OK. And if you look at our UV map in our UV room, it's been basically sent over there, and we also have our model here. Now, if for some reason it didn't bake well, meaning that we didn't capture any of that nice sort of off-white texturing, there could be something wrong. If I were to go back and do this again, so let's just go ahead and delete this model from the paint room and the layers, and then go back to the Retopo room. Let's try something else. Let's do the auto seams again, as we had done originally way back in the last video. And update island, so it's going to be, well, we have to unwrap it first. And then update our islands, and now go through the same thing again, except this time, instead of saying keep UV, well, actually we do have our UVs applied, so that's okay. We want to keep that. We'll just go ahead and move it over. And I know exactly why it didn't bake well. That's because I had my voxels off. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. It wasn't anything, it had nothing to do with my UVs necessarily. It had to do with the fact that my voxels were off, my voxel sculpture was off when I was baking it over. And actually that's a good mistake for me to make right now in front of you, because you'll learn something that's critical when you're doing this. So at this point, we're going to go look at our UV room. There's nothing there. I'm going to go back over here and give it another shot. And at that point, we should have some type of bake. Now, in this case, when it's all black like this, and you know it shouldn't be, there are baking problems. Something didn't work well. And that could be a number of things causing that. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and clear my seams again. I'm going to do this manually one more time. I'm going to mark my seams right here, and right here. I'm going to unwrap and then pack them, and then update my UV islands. Now I'm going to, with my voxel turned on, do the same process. Now some of this is a bake settings thing. It could be the material, it could be your UV unwrap or your topology. There's a lot of things that can go on that can mess this up, but that's nothing. The speed at which and accuracy at which this works is nothing short of amazing when it comes to, if you've ever tried to do this kind of work in another program, it's anywhere between painful to maybe somewhat easy. So that having been said, there's a lot of things you can do now. So you've got your UV room, you've got your tweak room all set up, which normally wouldn't have anything in it, and your paint room, which has something in it as well. So here we are, and we're ready to move on to the next step. Oh wait, not quite yet. So let's go into the UV room real quick and realize that there's a lot of things that we can update here. You're not stuck with the UVs that you have. So if we were to clear seams and clear clusters, we can redo this if we need to. Let's say we do this and this and maybe this, and then let's unwrap. And actually, I forgot to cut the line there. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's unwrap and pack, and then update our islands. Now, if I go to the paint room, I should be able to look at my textures and then look at my UV editor. Now, keep in mind that that didn't update the UV map for our painted model here. In order to do that, we're going to need to send it back over to the paint room. So let's go to our UV room and we're going to apply the UV set. So let's go back into our textures and look at our texture editor, and you'll see that the UV set has been applied. We've changed it, even though we've done no extra painting. Even if we had painted on this model already, you would see that these UVs have been updated, and we didn't have to change. We didn't have to repaint anything. It's just an amazing tool. There's a lot of things you can do that you can't do in a lot of other programs. So that's the last part of the UV room that I want to cover. Next up will be the paint room.